Tonight, let us wander together into the remarkable world of ancient Roma civilization, so confident, so endlessly curious that it seemed to possess unlimited time and energy to experiment with every substance and ritual imaginable. Before we begin, settle into your space. Prepare your mind for a gentle descent into a world far removed from our own. And, if you'd like, share where you're listening from, because Rome, in its time, drew everyone in from every distant corner of the known world. Picture the kind of Rome that is rarely conjured in modern memory. Not only the marble statues and serious philosophers, but an empire where citizens move through life in a haze, arresting in that ambiguous space. Between mild euphoria and spiritual wonder, sometimes convinced the gods were whispering to them directly. This is the Rome that history classes often avoid, a superpower that, for centuries, functioned as a civilization-wide wine festival, always in progress. Wine in Rome was never just a drink. It was their lifeblood, used for hydration, medicine, sociability, comfort, even forming the hidden foundation for some political decisions. Most Romans didn't fuss over delicate servings. They consumed robust quantities of wine liquids that tasted first like sweet raisins, then like salt water, and eventually like regret itself. And this wine was potent. It wasn't your gentle dinner companion. It was an experience all its own, sometimes best described as "who needs dinner?" Potent. The Romans added everything imaginable to their wine herbs. Spices, flowers, resins, and whatever was growing reachable nearby. Certainly, henbane. No hesitation. If a plant could make visions swirly or unlock the gateway to the gods, the Romans welcomed it into their cups. The spirit of experimentation spread far beyond wine. Rome stood at the crossroads of trade, receiving exotic plants, mysterious resins, and mind-altering herbs from Egypt, Greece, Persia, and beyond. Temples were transformed into sanctuaries of potent smoke. Priests inhaled the dense aromas, standing above burning braziers as if preparing for an incense-powered flight. Worshippers entered expecting solemnity, but often left convinced they'd conversed deeply with the divine. Roman religion thrived on visions, omens, and messages from higher powers. Temples themselves became architectural masterpieces and high-powered dream chambers, where breathing in the air could make the world shimmer with possibility. For Romans, all this was normal, in everyday balance between great achievement and gentle detachment from reality. They built roads, aqueducts, and armies, and then, when evening fell, found respite in altered states of mind. Rome, at heart, was the world's longest-running experiment in, "Are we sure this is a good idea?" And, remarkably, it thrived. Roman wine was not a modern beverage you sip quietly while making conversation. It was strong, unpredictable, and so modified by herbs and other substances that modern health inspectors would undoubtedly faint at its sight. The pure stuff was reserved for barbarians or desperate souls. Drinking undiluted wine was considered an act of wild abandon, as if wishing to taste colors and reshape reality. Yet, diluting the wine was no guarantee of safety. Because the Romans favored flavoring agents, that would make a modern pharmacist tremble. Spices, like cinnamon and saffron, were only the beginning. They stirred in miraculous extracts, myrrh, resin, pitch, and herbs celebrated in ancient texts for their ability to induce visions, unshackle the mind, or unlock the sleep gates. Conditum paradoxum, a remarkable wine blend mixed honey, pepper, dates, saffron, spices, and unnameable flora, delivering a gentle drink that could spiral into animated conversations with the walls. Wine became a social competition among Rome's wealthy. Hosting a memorable feast meant serving wine intense and strange enough to question one's existence. For those less fortunate, wine might be cheap and twice fermented, flavored with seawater, or so aged as to transform into something entirely new. The result, Roman society was powered on mild to moderate intoxication, day and night. The likes of Plato would have collapsed at their festivities. The average Roman greeted such excess with a shrug and an empty cup for refilling. Wine wasn't just embedded in Roman life, was the main thread of existence, weaving together medicine, entertainment, stress relief, and, at times, miraculous gateways to other worlds. If you could peer into a Roman household's medicine cabinet, you wouldn't find mild remedies. Instead, you'd discover an apothecary brimming with plants capable of healing, sedating, and, with little notice, launching one into other realms of consciousness. Henbane was among the most potent. Today's toxicologists advise strict caution, but the Romans regarded it as an essential addition perfect for wine, promising dreams and brief escapes from reality. Mandrake, the legendary root, was infamous for its powerful alkaloids. Ancient writers warned not to pull it from the earth by hand, but rather to send a loyal dog in case the shrieking plant proved fatal. Its reputation was mythic, used to treat pain, melancholy, infertility, and, at times, boredom. Mandrake, in small amounts, relaxed the drinker. A little more induced sleep. Too much, and one might return from the afterlife with stories to tell. The harvesting rituals were elaborate and dramatic. Romans used mandrake safely, mixing it into potions, grinding it into salves, and blending it with wine, never pausing to ask, "Is this wise?" Always pressing forward with curiosity. For pain, sleeplessness, stress, or just confusion, opium was at hand. It perfumed the air in temples, brightened cosmetics, and flowed through philosophical conversations that were less about logic and more about relaxation. Romans also explored nightshade, belladonna, poppy seeds, hemp, and any exotic plant arriving from distant lands with the enticing promise, "This will change your life." And it often did, for better or for worse. Confidence was the Roman style. Every herb, every root was embraced without fear or second thought. Nature's bounty viewed as an endless roulette wheel of possibility. If Rome bestowed an award for most likely to transport the drinker to another dimension, Mandrake would win year after year. Its human-like shape was not a warning, but a sign that it belonged in human hands. Mandrake was used for pain relief, love potions, and anesthesia during surgeries where, enveloped in dreams, the patient drifted between worlds as surgeons worked with archaic tools and the calm of practiced ritual. Mandrake didn't just relax the mind, it moved the spirit. Small doses brought drowsiness, medium doses, vivid dreams, and high doses, a gentle, restorative coma. Roman doctors relied on Mandrake's power for surgical anesthesia, trusting in its mysterious potency. For the Romans, these experiences were spiritual journeys as much as physiological ones, constant opening of doors, a repeated invitation to glimpse what lay beyond the ordinary world. So, as sleep takes hold and your own thoughts begin to blur at the edges, imagine the gentle chaos of ancient Roma world built on roads, marble, and the courage to endlessly test reality's limits. In this empire, to drink, to dream, and to wander into visions was never a weakness, but a form of balance. The Romans did not merely live. They explored every possibility, unafraid, open always to the next revelation the night and its mysterious wines might bring. Mandrake was like the ancient Roman rocket ship, powerful plant that many Romans willingly boarded to journey beyond the ordinary world. If you ever wondered how the priests of ancient Rome managed to speak with the gods, here is a secret your textbooks may have quietly left out. Many temples were not merely places of worship, but beautifully decorated smoke chambers filled with mind-altering fumes. These vapors were so potent they might have made even a stone statue reconsider its life choices. Some temples were built over natural vents where underground gases seeped upward. To the Romans, this was undeniable proof of divine presence. To a modern geologist, it's a clear warning not to breathe in those fumes. But the Romans inhaled joyfully and reverently, often chanting hymns that surely sounded more intense as the walls began to shimmer with the magic of the moment. Priests stood above these vents, their robes billowing in warm air scented with methane and ethylene gases that gave the brain the gentle push needed to start seeing things not really there. The people believed these visions were divine messages None paused to wonder if it was the gods or the fumes speaking. Even temples without natural vents remained hazardous, as Romans burned incense mixtures that would alarm today's health professionals. These weren't simple, pleasant aromas. They often contained herbs that enhanced visions. In other words, substances that almost guaranteed you'd meet the gods, whether you liked it or not. Take henbane, for example. Tossed into a brazier, it didn't just scent the room, it brought it alive. Worshippers saw floating lights, gods appearing in the smoke, and heard messages wafting on the wind, while the priests inhaled twice as deeply, probably gripping their altars tightly to avoid an unwanted encounter with Jupiter himself. Then there was the famed oracle of Delphi, whose mystery the Romans later embraced. Pilgrims journeyed across continents to hear the priestess mutter cryptic prophecies while perched above a volcanic vent, where sweet psychoactive gases flowed freely. To them, she was divinely inspired. She was inspired, all right, just not by anything on Mount Olympus. To the Romans, none of this was questionable. It was tradition, revelation, a normal part of their sacred Saturday. Truly, they built marble temples, set the stage with incense, added mind-altering smoke and called it religion. And in fairness, it worked. People left feeling enlightened, transformed, sometimes confused about whether their visions were spiritual or just good old-fashioned gas doing its job. In ancient Rome, spirituality was not just believed, it was inhaled. If you think modern parties get wild, allow yourself to be gently led to ancient Rome's Dionysian and Bacchic festivals, where sobriety was not only rare, but actively discouraged. These were not mere celebrations. They were immersive, full-body spiritual raves, powered by rivers of wine, music, chanting, questionable herbs, and an atmosphere that essentially the gods can judge us later. The Romans inherited these rituals from the Greeks, who worshipped Dionysus, the god of wine, ecstasy, and inexplicable late-night decisions. Rome renamed him Bacchus and said, "Perfect. Let's make the parties louder." These festivals were designed to dissolve inhibitions, erase social status, and free participants from the crushing burdens of Roman life, a life filled with taxes, wars, political betrayal, and togas precariously held together by hope. After months of harsh discipline, Romans didn't just want a break, they craved divine chaos. The ingredients of these festivals were generous. Wine flowed like a river with questionable boundaries, not sipped, but poured abundantly. This wine was spiced, boiled, and enhanced with mind-opening herbs. Priests blessed it, musicians encouraged its flow, and philosophers perhaps pretended to resist until the third cup. But wine was not the only player. Rituals also involved psychoactive leaves, inhaled incense mixtures of mysterious recipes that even today remain suspiciously vague. Scholars describe participants as entering altered states, a polite phrase that simply means the ancient Romans were vibing deeply with the universe. Drums, flutes, chanting, ecstatic dancing, and entire crowds moving rhythmically under torchlight filled the nights. At the height of the celebrations, participants felt Bacchus entering their bodies, guiding their movements, loosening their minds, and at times convincing them they were vines swaying in the wind. Any sober observer, if such a being existed, probably worried that Rome indeed required curfews. These festivals blurred the lines between religion and recreation. People sought freedom, unity, spiritual release, and the rare emotional catharsis that comes from singing loudly while unsure of the ground beneath your feet. The Roman Senate eventually tried to regulate or ban these events for being too remarkably noteworthy for a government that hosted public executions as entertainment. But Bacchus could not be silenced. Rome had legions, laws, and discipline, but it also had parties so powerful they might have made the gods themselves blush. If Roman public festivals were wild, wait until you hear about the secret ones. Mystery cults were Rome's VIP lounges of spiritual transformation, with robes, secrecy, devotion, and a tolerance for altered consciousness required for entry. These were popular among Romans who sought a deeper, more emotional connection to the divine beyond the usual sacrifice and go routine. The most famous were the Eleusinian mysteries, imported from Greece but highly fashionable in Rome. Central to their ritual was the kaikana, sacred drink described vaguely as barley-based. This sounds harmless until scholars point out barley's potential to harbor ergot, a fungus precursor to LSD's chemical structure. Pilgrims drank after fasting and chanting, launching themselves into spiritual catapults. They spent nights in dark temples, undergoing visions described as life-changing, soul-purifying, and frankly, beyond human explanation, which ancient Greek meant I'm definitely having a moment. Rome also hosted Orphic mysteries promising salvation, reincarnation, purification, and sometimes a mild dissociation from the physical world through torches. Music, ecstatic movement, and secret hymns that made initiates feel like they were drifting between dimensions. Then there were the Isis mysteries from Egypt, thick with incense fog, rhythmic chants, and vibrating music. Initiates described meeting the goddess Isis in visions. Modern historians suggest these were meetings with a mix of incense fumes, exhaustion, and ritual wine herbs. All mystery cults shared one key ingredient: experience. They were not quiet, passive visits, but immersive journeys designed to shatter ordinary consciousness and rebuild it with divine meaning. Altered states were not unfortunate side effects, but deliberate features. The best part is that members swore secrecy, so the stories ranged from profound revelations to "I legally cannot tell you what happened," the ancient version of signing an NDA. Mystery cults were Rome's hidden, spiritual, emotional, and chemical. If Rome had a universal solution to life's hardships, it wasn't philosophy, discipline, or stoicism. It was opium, the Roman sleep button, painkiller, mood stabilizer, and a tiny poppy-derived ticket to temporary escape. Opium was everywhere, disturbingly normal, kept in homes like modern-day bandages or cough syrup. Walk into a Roman household without poppy extract, and you'd wonder if you were lost. Doctors prescribed opium for nearly everything: headaches, toothaches, fevers, broken bones, grief, melancholy, insomnia, boredom, and the constant threat of being stabbed in the forum for too much confidence. If you had a problem, opium had an answer, and Roman doctors did not hesitate to use it. They mixed it with wine, honey, and spices herbs. Modern pharmacists would faint at hand, served it in drinks, pills, salves, or, if unlucky, as suppositories. The method of delivery mattered less than the fact it reached your system. Opium was not reserved for the sick. Soldiers used it to endure marching and wounds. Mothers to sleep after tucking children in. Philosophers to think deeply ancient Roman code for staring blankly and hoping the universe reveals its secrets. Even poets used it for inspiration, which explains much about Roman poetry. The effects were glorious from a Roman perspective. Light doses eased pain and softened the body. Medium doses brought warmth, euphoria, and the delightful illusion of sudden wisdom. High doses sent one into deep, heavy sleep, capable of missing several political assassinations and waking up refreshed. But as with all things Roman, they often took it too far. Some wealthy Romans developed a taste for stronger preparations, which is ancient historian language for please stop doing that. Your soul is trying to leave your body. Opium dependency existed long before modern medicine even recognized the word. Still, the Romans never blamed the opium itself. Instead, they blamed fate, the gods, or the burdensome nature of empire building. Opium was more than medicine for Rome. It was their emotional crutch, spiritual pacifier, and universal reset button. When life grew too loud, Romans pressed the poppy and escaped into its embrace. If mandrake was their rocket ship and opium their sleep button, then henbane was the Roman. Why did we ever think this was a good idea? Henbane looked innocent enough, a leafy green plant with pale flowers and a mildly sinister aura. Yet every part of its seeds, leaves, stems, roots contained alkaloids capable of rearranging reality as if a bored god was moving the furniture. Modern science warns against even touching it. But the Romans embraced henbane enthusiastically. Why? Because it made people feel relaxed, euphoric, dreamy, and sometimes convinced they were floating a few feet above the ground. Henbane didn't produce gentle visions, it created hallucinogenic chaos. The kind where one might spend a half hour having a polite conversation with a clay statue. Romans used henbane mainly as a sedative. Doctors prescribed it for anxiety, sleeplessness, or just too quiet, unruly voices. A cup of henbane wine could silence anyone, sometimes a little too well, requiring relatives to nudge the sleeper awake now and then. Others enjoyed small doses before parties, claiming it helped them relax, though in practice, relaxing often meant whispering secrets to a wall. And yes, henbane was used in eye drops, a testament to Roman medical bravery or recklessness. What made henbane especially dangerous was its inconsistency. 2 leaves might induce pleasant drowsiness. 3 leaves could spark a philosophical debate with a passing cloud. 4 might briefly transport you to the afterlife for a quick tour. Roman medical texts warned not to exceed the appropriate dose without clarifying what that dose actually was, and yet Romans kept using it. Even Roman soldiers carried henbane mixtures, not for courage, but for pain reliefs, so a legion on the march across Gaul might be quietly hallucinating friendlier landscapes than the ones around them. Henbane didn't discriminate. Rich, poor, free, enslaved, anyone could take too much and suddenly find themselves spiritually conversing with a candle. Rome never blamed the plant for mishaps. The blame was always on human error, fate, or bad luck. Henbane was safe, they insisted, as long as you re careful, which was Roman code for we haven tea, learned a thing. Henbane was no too lit, was a dare, and the Romans accepted every challenge. If you picture ancient Roman parties as elegant affairs, draped in marble and gilded cups, you've been catastrophically misled. Beneath the surface of luxury was something far less refined. Rooms were deliberately filled with psychoactive vapors that made guests relaxed, euphoric, blissful, or barely tethered 2 times passage. Wealthy Romans didn't just host dinners, they curated multisensory experiences. Nothing said elite gathering like heating scented oils over bronze burners until the air thickened with perfumed clouds. Some oils carried rose, cinnamon, myrrh, or cardamom pleasant, respectable scents. Others included plants described by ancient writers with phrases like induces forgetfulness, loosens the limbs, or promotes visions, which historians translate as please open your windows. Guests reclined on cushioned couches as attendants warmed brazier coals, poured aromatic oils, and allowed sweet smoke to drift lazily. Romans called this elite relaxation. Modern fire inspectors would call it a series of poor decisions. Some hosts preferred key, an Egyptian incense blend made with raisins, honey, wine, herbs, and, depending on the recipe, mild narcotics. Others imported exotic Arabian resins that produced a gentle floating sensation in enclosed spaces. There are even tales of hallucinogenic herbs mixed into burners, creating fragrant haze that made guests philosophical, emotional, and intensely interested in the ceiling. And of course, there were steam rooms, wealthy bathhouses, vaporized oils and herbs for health benefits, but sitting in a sealed stone chamber filled with steaming psychoactive botanicals long enough, didn't tea just improve health? It transported the mind. These fumigated environments were carefully calibrated, enough aroma to impress, warmth to relax, and mystery to spark wild dinner conversation. A slightly disoriented guest was the highest compliment. If someone lost track of what century it was, the party was a roaring success. Imagine reclining under flickering lamps, air heavy with scented smoke, wine in hand, surrounded by half-drunk philosophers arguing about stars, while slowly drifting into incense-fueled dream states. Such evenings were typical Roman Tuesdays. Fumigation wasn't mere decoration, it was entertainment, invisible, fragrant, and strong enough to make guests question if the floor was moving. If you worry about modern medicine, remember, ancient Roman doctors combined creativity, confidence, and catastrophic guesswork that somehow passed for science for centuries. When it came to psychoactive substances, they didn't just prescribe, they celebrated them. Their motto might as well have been, if it grows and doesn't tea, immediately kill you, it's medicinal. Romans believed nearly every physical, emotional, or existential ailment could be solved by combining wine with whatever plant was nearby. Fever, wine with poppy extract. Insomnia, wine with mandrake. Toothache, wine with henbane. Stress from empire building, more wine. Roman medical texts describe these treatments as soothing and relaxing, suspiciously poetic language for substances that made people forget their own names. Doctors administered them with the serene confidence of someone who never questioned their life choices. Sleep medicines came in clay cups that might as well have been labeled, "Trust me, I'm a physician." Typical sedatives mixed opium, mandrake, saffron, and strong wine. Patients didn't just fall asleep, they departed. Painkillers were even more dramatic, with surgeons using mandrake and opium to knock out patients before procedures. It sort of worked. Patients might be unconscious, but also floating in vivid visions of the underworld as surgeons operated nearby, casually advising, "Try to lie still." Roman doctors didn't stop at ingestion. They made topical treatments, balms, salves, ointments infused with psychoactive herbs that seeped into the skin, numb physically and confuse spiritually. You could seek relief from muscle pain and leave convinced you briefly floated above your own body. For emotional distress, doctors prescribed narcotic perfumes, incense burners with calming vapors, or long herbal baths that would make a modern herbalist scream into a pillow. And the remarkable part, everyone acted as though this was perfectly normal. Patients, doctors, neighbors all nodded approvingly as mild hallucinations became part of the healing ritual. In Rome, medicine wasn't just about curing. It was about relocating consciousness while the body figured things out. If ancient Rome had an award for a most unpredictable substance, mushrooms would win. They might refuse it themselves, having hallucinated the podium. Mushrooms were the wild cards, sometimes delicious, sometimes deadly, sometimes spiritually enlightening, and sometimes capable of sending emperors straight to the afterlife. Romans loved mushrooms, cultivating, cooking, trading, and boasting about them at dinner parties. But ancient Rome lacked mushroom guides or trained mycologists. Enthusiasm was the only guide. Some mushrooms were harmless and tasty. Others, like the death cap, were fatally toxic and resembled edible varieties. This caused many unfortunate events, but the Romans did not stop to reconsider. They expanded their mushroom experiments, tasting, infusing them in stews, sauces, and wines. Some sought mushrooms for mind-altering effects, visions, dreams, spiritual clarity, or miscommunications with furniture. Among the elite, rare mushroom dishes were status symbols. The rarer, the more impressed the guests. But rare did not always mean safe. One emperor, Claudius, famously died after eating mushrooms his wife prepared. Ancient gossip says, unequivocally, yes, she poisoned him. Mushrooms played a starring role in imperial drama. Some Romans believed certain mushrooms brought one closer to the gods. They thought the effects were not poisonous but divine. These mushrooms, when dried, boiled, or mixed with wine, created experiences described as dreamlike, vision-inducing, or even a conversation with destiny, depending on the poet's flair. Did all these mushrooms have true psychedelic properties? Not all, but some likely did. Rome had access to regions in the Alps, Balkans, and Near East where psychoactive species grew. Travelers brought tales of dream mushrooms, night mushrooms, and laughing mushrooms that sparked uncontrollable joy. Naturally, Romans were eager to try them. What better way to spice up a festival, a dinner, or a philosophical debate? Still, mushrooms carried a reputation for danger. They were culinary Russian roulette, delightful surprise, or an immediate tragedy. But that only spurred Roman curiosity. Nothing appealed more to their sensibilities than food, combining luxury, risk, and the chance to glimpse the divine. Mushrooms were mystery, thrill, temptation. In Rome, even dinner could alter reality. When imagining gladiators stepping, we picture discipline, grit, raw power. What we rarely picture is some entering the Colosseum slightly buzzed, mildly sedated, or convinced the lions were oversized house cats. But welcome to Rome, where even the fiercest professions intersected with beloved intoxicants. Gladiators were elite athletes, but also expensive property. Their owners wanted them alive, profitable, and entertaining. So before fights, many received herbal mixtures to boost performance. Others got sedatives to ease anxiety. Occasionally, a poor soul got something turning the arena into a dreamscape painted by a confused god. One common tonic was poppy-based. Not full opium doses trainers didn't want fighters unconscious. These light mixtures calmed nerves, dulled pain, and stopped panic at the sight of a hungry, athletic lion. The goal: focus, confidence, not existential dread. Of course, results varied. A lightly dosed gladiator might feel courageous and steady. A moderate dose might create unusual philosophical thoughts, leading to odd negotiations with opponents. Heavily dosed gladiators sometimes walked into the arena with serene calm, believing destiny was already decided. Not all substances calmed. Some trainers tried stimulants, bitter extracts, pungent spices, mysterious leaves from exotic traders claiming exaggerated benefits. These concoctions pumped gladiators full of adrenaline, energy, and often complete confusion about what they were fighting. Some rare whispers tell of hallucinogenic herbs causing fighters to swing at shadows, bow to invisible gods, or charge lions, symbolic rather than real. In fairness, the arena was terrifying. If a herbal courage boost helped face a rhinoceros imported just for sport, who could blame them? The crowd never knew they assumed gladiators were fueled by bravery, discipline, and raw Roman spirit. Behind the scenes, one might have whispered, "Drink this. Don't ask what's in it." Good luck. The arena was not just sand and blood, but occasionally wine, herbs, and a touch of altered perception. If everyday Romans were experimental, emperors with limitless wealth and ego took things further. Being emperor meant access to the finest wines, rarest plants, and palace staff dedicated to preparing beverages that might make a philosopher cry. Consider Caligula, whose life was a dare. He enjoyed potent mixtures spiced with exotic ingredients, some stimulating, some sedative, others pharmacologically concerning. These fueled his late-night parties, bizarre decisions, and governance that resembled fever dreams over strategy. Nero, known for poetry, alleged arson, and supreme self-belief, hosted dinner parties with perfumed vapors leaking from hidden ceiling panels, rare wines infused with herbs, and musicians playing for hours as guests slowly drifted into numb states. If guests left aware of what century it was, Nero deemed the party a failure. No emperor embraced chemical curiosity like Hadrian, who collected strange plants during imperial travels, consulting healers, and herbalists offering brews that ranged from mild relaxation to dreams of remarkable clarity, ancient codes for encounters with spirits. Even Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, relied heavily on theory, an herbal compound containing opium for pain relief. It likely helped him endure the Roman Senate, which was enough to drive anyone to reconsider reality. Imperial physicians were never conservative. They encouraged emperors to try rare roots, enchanted herbs, and powders from Arabia, Persia, and India. Each new plant was a possibility miracle, danger, conversation starter. The result: Roman emperors lived in a surreal mix of stress, power, creativity, paranoia, and whatever potion their personal physician brewed that morning. Ruling the largest empire could feel heavy. Roman emperors, human after all, sometimes lightened reality with substances strong enough to make even the gods raise an eyebrow. After wandering Rome's vineyards, temples, bathhouses, apothecaries, and questionable kitchens, one truth stands clear: Romans treated altered states not just with curiosity, but as a national pastime. Rome's legacy is not just roads and aqueducts, but a long, surprising list of substances, rituals, fumes, brews, potions, and plants that together declare this empire was always busy exploring consciousness. They were not reckless, not exactly. They were explorers not only of geography, but of mind. While legions marched continents, Roman citizens boldly asked, "What happens if we drink this?" Often, the answer was something better left unwritten. Yet, they wrote it down: medical texts, temple inscriptions, plays, poems, gossip, and scandalous biographies reveal a civilization deeply entwined with substances that changed their worldview, and sometimes how the world saw them. Wine was not just a drink, it was infrastructure. Medicine was not mere treatment. Religion was immersion, with opium-laced bombs and incense-induced revelations. Rome approached altered states with boldness, artistry, and little concern for consequences. Most fascinating is the lack of judgment. Intoxication was not taboo, but a tool for healing, pleasure, spirituality, philosophy, courage, or simply enduring another day of unruly neighbors, political betrayal, or noisy geese. Even Rome's greatest mind, Stoic philosophers debated fate while possibly influenced by sleep potions. Emperors wrestled with existence amid incense strong enough to make furniture sway, while the average Roman ended his workday with wine that modern laws would forbid. And through it all, Rome endured, thrived, and shaped the world for millennia. Rome's relationship with intoxication was no flaw, but a human story, a story of escape, exploration, connection, numbness, celebration, expansion, and dreams. We often picture ancient people as stern and severe, but Rome reminds us they laughed, danced, experimented, erred, took risks, and often got higher than any history book imagined. The roads crumble, temples fall, emperors fade into legend. But the stories, the honest, chaotic, human stories, remain. Among these, a simple, undeniable truth. Ancient Romans reached heights far beyond what we were taught to believe. This is where your morning stress truly begins. The air's humidity feels like an enemy. Morning dew. Enemy. Just a touch of dampness because someone sneezed nearby. Enemy. If your bowstring gets wet, it becomes as useless as a knight trying to fight stairs. So you keep it wrapped, tucked, and protected like your firstborn child. Breakfast, if you can call it that, usually consists of whatever the camp hasn't yet eaten, lost, or accidentally dropped into the fire. Perhaps some bread, maybe a few onions, or something that once was bread but has since become more weapon than food. It doesn't matter. You choke it down because accuracy demands calories, and because you don't know when the next meal will come. As the camp wakes, you begin winding your bow. Winding, yes, firing a crossbow is far from glamorous. You don't pull the string back with mighty arms like a heroic figure from tapestry. No, you use a crank, a stirrup, or a goat's foot laviche, designed to make you look like a man attempting to assemble furniture wrong. As you crank, you hear the muttering of the long bowmen. They hate that peasants can be trained to use your weapon in a week. They hate that your bolts pierce armor. They fear you, secretly, like knights fear a shadow. And you enjoy this because you're a crossbowman, and by lunchtime, someone important will be terrified of you. If you imagined the life of a crossbowman as glamorous, it's time to lower your expectations, preferably all the way down to the mud where you kneel, sweat, and load your stubborn medieval machine one crank at a time, while other soldiers swing swords enthusiastically like toddlers. You begin with mechanical engineering. A crossbow shot isn't simply draw, aim, release. It's draw, crank, curse under your breath, adjust, crank again, pray the string doesn't snap, and then maybe release. Loading is a full-body workout disguised as warfare. First, you wedge your foot into the stirrup at the bow's front. Then you bend forward like you're about to lift an angry goat. You pull the string back or attach the goat's foot lever and start cranking, slowly, painfully, loudly. Every enemy within a mile knows you're here, but that's fine. They're all terrified of the bolt following this embarrassing ritual. Once cocked, you carefully place the bolt in its groove, because fumbling your shot and dropping a precious bolt into dirt is a tragedy. Meanwhile, longbowmen have released dozens of arrows each and silently judge. But speed isn't your game. You deal in certainty. Longbowmen spray the battlefield, hoping luck favors them. But you take your time because your shot usually ends something important. Armor is no defense. A well-placed bolt can slice through a plate like a medieval uninstall button. Knights know this and pray for divine smiting. None of this matters if someone charges mid-crank. A crossbowman caught reloading is about as dangerous as a wet towel. That SYU hide behind Pavis's giant shields, stuck in the ground door behind infantry, who hopefully value your life enough not to abandon you. So you keep cranking, loading, aiming, hoping the string stays dry. The bolt flies true, and fate grants you time to do what crossbowmen do best: end things with unnerving precision, all before lunch. One truth becomes clear: everyone wants you dead first. Knights see you as a walking, armor-piercing tragedy. Archers call you the overpowered Petuin class. Even your own side looks at you oddly, knowing if the enemy has crossbowmen too, you're about to reenact the world's slowest duel. That's why Pavises become your best friends, emotional companions. Sometimes your only reason to survive past breakfast. Huge, heavy, awkward, and as portable as a barn door, they keep you alive. You and your Pythia, the poor soul carrying the shield, form a sacred duo. The shooter and the shieldman, a muddy, stressed, medieval buddy film with no witty dialogue. You crouch behind the Pavis like a gremlin, hiding from the sun as your car incoming fire. Then you endure the long, humiliating loading process. The Paviseer hears every crank, grunt, and insult as you wind the mechanism. Finally, ready to shoot, you pop out. Release a bolt that ruins someone's entire lineage and dive back behind cover, praying your armor holds. Coordination is everything. Too early with a shield, and you get peppered with arrows. Too late, and you shoot the back of the Pavas, earning a glare usually reserved for anyone who borrows money and never pays it back. You are a T-mod, muddy, perpetually anxious, but a team nonetheless. The battlefield only worsens matters. Arrows fall like angry rain. Longbowmen target you because they know how deadly you are. Knights take it personally, the thought of a perfectly crafted suit of armor breached by a crank-wielding thrower enrages them into galloping vengeance. That's why positioning matters. You don't fight front or midline. You exist comfortably in the back, behind sturdy shields and expendable infantry, picking off foes while insisting everyone stay between you and danger. The crossbowman's day isn't just shooting, it's surviving the 30 seconds between shots. Your self-worth boils down to one perfect moment, the thunk of a bolt hitting exactly where it shouldn't. Knights call it ungodly, bishops barbaric, but to you it's Tuesday out. Bolts are not arrows, smaller, heavier, shaped like roofing nails. Each one is designed to punch through armor like a medieval tax collector's. Low, inevitable, and agonizing. You don't fire them to intimidate. You fire them to end arguments. But it's not just the bolt. The power behind it matters. The crossbow stores more energy than any human arm ever could, which means even knights with months of craft behind their armor aren't safe. There's deep satisfaction watching a heavily armored noble, trained for years, fall to a man who mastered his weapon in just a frustrating week. Armorers detest you. They spend hours shaping steel plates, polishing curves, and riveting brass, only for your bolt to treat the suit like butter in the sun. Some demand extra pay to fix crossbow damage, claiming it feels like watching someone graffiti the Mona Lisa. Accuracy is your pride. Unlike longbowmen who spray arrows hoping for luck, you wait, breathe, aim. Pick a target up on the confident knight waving his sword. Send a bolt toward his chest, knee, or horse. The battlefield falls into a mental silence, a beat of collective shock. The church answers indignantly, absolutely not. But you're doing it anyway. Your weapon changed warfare. Castles wavered, armies adapted, tactics evolved. And somewhere, a knight quietly plots how unfair life became. If swords hate armor and knights hate logic, crossbows defy weather. All weather, sun too hot, rain, a tragedy, fog, humidity, snow, dew, anything damp is your sworn enemy. You are not just a soldier. You are a full-time meteorologist, anxious because your delicate string refuses to perform unless conditions are perfect. One raindrop, a bead of condensation, or a badly timed sneeze can loosen or snap your string. Snap the string, and congratulations, you're left holding an expensive wooden club. Crossbowmen develop weather paranoia. A drifting cloud is doom. Rain is catastrophe, not because you'd melt, though after medieval hygiene. Many probably smelled half melted already, but because rain turns your job into tragic theater. You tuck your crossbow under your cloak like a man hiding a forbidden pet, while longbowmen fire-soaked, wild, and annoyingly effective. Mud invades mechanisms. Boots, soul-cranking, becomes a gritty grind, like wrestling a swamp monster. Wind mocks your aim, forcing you to adjust with scientific patience amid shouts to just shoot already. Snow fools with dryness before melting and ruining your string, sending you to an exhausting battle of rubbing it with animal fat, cloth, prayers, or whatever dry thing you find. Meanwhile, your commander expects perfection, even when the sky seems to fall apart, when everything you own is soaked, clogged, frozen, or cursed. You still get only one shot every few minutes, and that shot better count. If firing the crossbow is the glorious part of your life, then marching is the ungainly, soul-crushing majority. Marching as a crossbowman is neither elegant nor inspiring. It is a grueling test of endurance while bearing gear designed to break your back. Let's begin with the weight. Your crossbow is heavy. Your bolts are heavy. Your Pavesier's Pavis shield, if you're unlucky enough to carry it, weighs like building material. Your armor adds more weight. By the time you are fully equipped, you resemble a medieval pack mule with performance anxiety. Then you walk and walk and walk through mud thick enough to drown a goat. Forests dense with roots poised to trip you. Villages where children point as if you were a strange spectacle. It's not glamorous or noble. It's blisters and slow defeat by gravity. Longbowmen mock you as you march. Their bows are light, their quivers stuffed with dozens of thin arrows rather than heavy bolts. They bounce along cheerfully, likely eager to bully you again later. You sweat through your tunic, clutching your gear like a man lost at sea. Every crossbowman masters one essential survival skill, shifting the load to pretend it's lighter carrying on shoulder. Hip, underarm, over the back, clutched to chest, trotating every 10 minutes to keep your arms from rebellion. No matter how you hold it, something aches. Then there's the nightmare of marching with a weapon that cannot get wet. Clouds gather, you panic. Drizzle falls, you panic more. You end up walking with your crossbow hidden beneath your cloak, looking like you're protecting either a weapon or a lumpy baby. Neither is comfortable. Commanders constantly shout orders, keep formation, stop dragging, don't fall behind. Easy for them, they ride horses, dry and elevated, while you develop a romance with suffering. Finally, soaked with sweat, dirt, in dread, you reach your destination. Nights ride past, fresh as daisies, loudly reminding everyone how important they are. Only you can bring down an armored enemy with a single precise bolt, and that's why you march. When battle begins, every crossbowman feels the same mix of terror and reluctant professionalism. You are not a knight galloping boldly, nor a longbowman firing arrows like a caffeinated wood elf. You are something more stressful, a soldier with exactly one shot that must count. The battle sounds surround you, shields clashing, horses snorting, commanders shouting inaudible orders. You crouch behind your pavis, psyching yourself for the day's most nerve-wracking 30 seconds. The first crank is the worst. Your hands tremble. Your breath quivers. You try to appear calm, but inside, you scream. The first volley comes, they shoot. Arrows whistle like angry insects. You duck instinctively, then peek just long enough to find targets. Knights group, infantry, advance, archers find positions. You choose carefully. This is not for fun. It's malice and intent. Crank, crank, bolt in aim. In the heartbeat before release, you find calm and focus. One visor slit, one seam between breastplates, one arrogant knight barking orders like he's immortal. You pull the trigger. The bolt flies with a thunk that feels like destiny slipping from your hands. Maybe you hit a knight in the chest. Drop the standard bearer, throwing formations into chaos, or ruin a horse's afternoon. Someone's bad day is yours to claim, but no admiring your work. You duck back behind cover and begin slow reloading while everything tries to kill you. Knights charge, infantry shout, arrows rain. You crank sounds like you're assembling unwanted furniture. Sometimes enemies spot you and target you especially. Crossbowmen are high-priority threats, sits, flattering, and terrifying. You need to reload faster than your fingers feel ready. And so the cycle repeats. Shoot, hide, crank, sweat, repeat. Battle is chaos for others. The most stressful part, knowing your next shot must be better than the last. If you want pure medieval fear, watch a crossbowman standing as a formation of knights charge. You can almost hear their thoughts. That peasant with the unfair weapon get him. Knights hate, crossbowmen intensely not casual annoyance, but burning hatred. They spent fortunes on armor only to find your bolts pierce it like soft meat. You embody everything they find dishonorable: precision, efficiency, and technology beyond their understanding. So they charge at you. Challenging knights are terrifying. The ground trembles, horses roar, lances lower. Dramatic, cinematic, powerful, ket to you. It means 20 seconds to load, aim, fire, and run. Your commander shouts vague orders like hold. You crank like it's a speed contest you never signed up for. Your pavisier yells to hurry as if the crossbow has a secret turbo mode. If all goes perfectly and it rarely does, you get 1 or 2 shots before doom gallops near. This is crossbow brilliance. One perfect bolt shatters a charge. Take out a horse, and a knight becomes a confused pedestrian. Take out the knight, and panic replaces discipline. If you miss, run fast. The knights don't want to capture you. They want to make an example. Your infantry sometimes shields you, a mix of strategy and pity. They know you can't reload on the move. You hold a massive wooden smile of encouragement while reloading. But when your bolt lands, you become battlefield royalty. Knights scatter, horses fall, commanders reconsider. For one moment, the battle bends to your will. 10 seconds later, you reload again, and the hatred resumes. The sanctuary itself felt like a place where reality gently bent and folded. Laurel leaves crackled in the fires, filling the chamber with their sweet, sharp scent. Bowls of burning incense release slow, rolling waves of smoke that curled toward the ancient stone walls. Carved with timeless maxims, know thyself, nothing in excess. Give a pledge, and ruin is near. Every traveler who entered this temple did not feel watched by the priests, but by something older, something unseen and eternal. The Pythia, the oracle priestess, prepared herself in ritual silence. She bathed in the sacred Castalian spring, chewed fresh laurel leaves, and drank from the holy waters of Casates, said to carry the very essence of Apollo's divine breath. Only then did she descend into the adit, the temple's innermost chamber. Here, the earth itself seemed to breathe. Fissure exhaled sweet, strange, and disorienting vapors. The ancients believed these fumes were the breath of Apollo himself, When the Pythia mounted her bronze tripod, everything changed. Her eyes grew distant, unfocused, but not blind. Her breath deepened. Her body swayed gently, rhythmically, like one drifting between waking and dreaming. Priests stood close, ready to catch every whispered syllable, every muttered word. She did not always speak in clear sentences. Sometimes she whispered, other times she cried out, or sank so deep into trance she seemed suspended between worlds. Whatever sounds escaped her lips, the priests interpreted as Apollo's message. Outside, kings, generals, desperate fathers, and ambitious tyrants waited with solemn fear. The Pythia rarely offered comfort or flattery. Instead, she delivered truths wrapped in riddles words that shaped futures, launched wars, crowned kings, and destroyed dynasties. To the Greeks, she was not merely a woman. She was Apollo's chosen mouthpiece, the fragile bridge between mortal and God, who rarely spoke directly. As she inhaled the temple's swirling vapors, and her voice blurred into something no longer fully human, the world outside held its breath. When the Pythia spoke, even fate itself seemed to listen. No one simply walked into the oracle of Delphi for a casual visit. The process felt less like entering a holy site and more like preparing to negotiate with the universe itself. Pilgrims approached Delphi along the sacred Waya winding path, lined with treasuries, statues, and offerings brought from every corner of the Greek world. Each gift told a story. Gold, bronze, shields, and sacred tripods marked individuals who once stood where you stood, desperate for answers. Before asking a question, supplicants purified themselves in the icy waters of the Castalian spring. Some believed the water sharpened their senses. Others thought it merely jolted weary travelers awake. Either way, purification was mandatory. Apollo did not entertain the unwashed. Next came sacrifice. A goat was sprinkled with cold water. If it shivered, the gods approved. If it didn't, the session was cancelled, the temple closed, and the petitioner sent away with more questions than when they arrived. If the goat cooperated, downed. Goats are notorious for drama, was slaughtered, its entrails read, and omens interpreted. Only then might a petition proceed. But prophecy was no casual purchase. An offering was required valuable enough to show Apollo that your time was not wasted. Wealthy kings brought gold. City-states sent bronze statues. Ordinary people offered what they could: bread, oil, wool, or a small gift. The priests did not judge. Apollo did. Inside the temple, the atmosphere thickened, even intimidated. The priests of Delphi managed the oracle's operations. They gathered your name, origin, question, and offering, the gatekeepers and interpreters of a divine bureaucracy. Without them, the Pythia's ecstatic utterances would be indecipherable bursts of energy. With them, her words became political weapons and spiritual guideposts. Finally, the moment arrived for the question, the purpose of your journey. Instructions were clear. Ask carefully, clearly, respectfully. Many rehearsed for days, fearful of phrasing it poorly. The gods were known to twist meanings, punish arrogance. You did not come hoping for a friendly chat. You came fearing divine anger. Then, with sacrifices burning, incense curling upward, and laurel branches rustling softly, you were led toward the Edaton, the innermost chamber. The Pythia waited. The air vibrated with expectation. Your life, ambitions, even survival, all hinged on a single cryptic answer from Apollo's chosen voice. To the ancient world, the Pythia's trance was divine possession. To those close enough to witness, it was mesmerizing and unsettling, half sacred ritual, half raw surrender to powers beyond understanding. The Adyton was a world apart. Torches flickered against ancient stone walls, inscribed with prayers and warnings. Laurel leaves burned in bronze bowls, releasing a crackling perfume that clung to your lungs. At the center stood the sacred tripod, perched above the earth's fissure. The Pythia descended alone. No priests accompanied her. This moment belonged only to her and the god. Before seating herself, she performed preparatory rite sewing laurel leaves to receive Apollo, sprinkling holy water, whispering his invocation with rhythmic chants. Her breathing deepened, her posture shifted. As she mounted the tripod, the temple seemed to hold its breath. The vapors rising from the earth divine, geological or psychological, mattered little. Everyone who entered described the sensation as intoxicating, sweet, strange, as if the very world dissolved around the edges. Modern scholars debate the source, but to the Greeks, these were Apollo's breath visions, carried from the realm of gods into frail human minds. As the Pythia inhaled, her body swayed rhythmically, caught between consciousness and dream, her voice shifting, softening, then breaking into fragmented phrases. Her world of ordinary sound faded. In its place arose flashes, burning cities, rising kings, storm-tossed ships, triumphant armies, doomed ambitions. She saw threads of fate woven beyond mortal unraveling. When she finally spoke, was less conversation and more incantations, sometimes whispers confiding in shadows, sometimes cries as words tore through her voice. Priests listened beyond the chamber door, catching each syllable, weaving them into polished prophecies. To witnesses, she seemed mad. To believers, she communed with divinity. For the Greeks, this moment was Apollo's presence, not through miracles or lightning, but through a trembling mortal woman on a tripod, seated above the earth's living breath. Her words traveled far beyond the temple, shaping the ambitions of kings, redirecting armies, and redrawing the ancient world's political map. Leaders commanding thousands bowed before one woman, understanding one truth. Apollo did not lie, but his truth rarely came easy. The greatest rulers approached Delphi with reverence and dread, seeking riddled truths that might justify wars or topple kingdoms. King Croesus of Lydia, the wealthiest man alive, asked if he would conquer Persia. The Pythia's reply, "If you cross the Halys River, you will destroy a great empire." He took it as a green light, marched forth, attacked, and destroyed a great empire, his own. Xerxes of Persia, preparing to invade Greece, sought the oracle's counsel. Instead of fear or flattery, he received dire warnings of burning cities, gods turning their backs, wrath falling like storms. Yet arrogance propelled him forward. Her prophecy haunted his campaign, especially as Greek resistance stiffened unexpectedly. Even city-states treated her pronouncements as strategic assets. Corinth, Athens, Sparta all sent delegations with gifts, hoping to earn Apollo's favor. Sparta consulted Delphi before the Persian wars, receiving a grim prophecy. Either a Spartan king must die, or Sparta itself would fall. Leonidas marched armed with this knowledge etched into his fate. To the ancients, the Pythia did not predict futures, but revealed existing path-offering mirrors kings feared. Every prophecy was a gamble. Every word weighed risk. The oracle did not serve kings. Kings served the oracle. Behind this divine voice stood priests, educated, politically connected, skillful in turning cryptic phrases into potent prophecies that echoed across the Greek world. If the Pythia was Apollo's voice, these men were his translators and strategists, shaping how her words rippled through history. The Delphic priesthood served as the crucial first line of interpretation for the cryptic utterances of the Pythia, the oracle priestess. When she entered her trance and released raw, fragmented phrases, sometimes poetic, sometimes chaotic, the priests listened with trained ears. To them, these murmurs were not meaningless sounds, but a form of cosmic shorthand. They carefully shaped the divine fragments into structured responses, often composed in elegant Greek hexameter, a poetic form mortals associated with the authority and sacredness of the gods. However, the priest's role extended far beyond translation. They controlled access to the sanctuary, deciding who could enter, who must wait, who paid. They kept meticulous records, monitored the delicate political tensions among the city-states, and understood the intricate power dynamics better than many ambassadors of the time. In an age without newspapers or widespread communication, Delphi functioned as the central information hub of the Mediterranean. Envoys from across Greece brought news, fears, rumors, and ambitions to the temple gates. The priests absorbed these currents, often understanding the broader context more clearly than the rulers posing questions. They frequently knew of troop movements, alliances, and secret treaties before generals did. Moreover, when kings sought expansion, the priests gauged divine favor, sensing how the political winds blew. Their interpretations were not merely translations, but informed by a deep grasp of human nature and international strategy. This blend of mystical authority and political insight made Delphi immensely powerful. Apollo's voice was divine, but the priests delivered it with sharpness, clarity, and purpose. Though immensely influential, the priests did not view themselves as manipulators. They believed their duty was to clarify Apollo's truth, ensuring the message reached mortals with the weight it deserved. Through this sacred triad, the god who sees all, the woman who channels his voice, and the priests who shape the revelation, Delphi became far more than a sanctuary. It became the unseen hand guiding the ancient world. It was universally understood that the oracle did not offer simple clarity. She did not say yes or no. Instead, she spoke in maddening, poetic riddles, frustrating puzzles that kings spent sleepless nights trying to decipher. This method was no accident, but the very essence of Apollo's communication. The gods, after all, did not see the world as humans did. Mortals sought straightforward answers. Gods dealt in cosmic balance, destiny, and consequence. A direct answer might lock someone into an unchangeable path, or allow misuse that would disrupt divine order. Thus, Apollo compelled reflection rather than provided certainty. Famous examples show this clearly. When King Croesus asked if he should attack Persia, the Pythia replied, "If you cross the Halys River, you will destroy a great empire." Croesus assumed it meant victory over Persia, and in fact, it foretold the destruction of his own kingdom. The prophecy was true. The interpretation was flawed. Before the Persian invasion, the oracle told Athens to trust in the wooden walls. Panic and debate ensued. Did it mean physical walls, ships, or a barricade? Themistocles concluded it referred to Athens's Phleida, realization critical to the eventual Greek victory at Salamis. Oracles, riddles, forced leaders to think deeply, strategize cautiously, and confront their biases. While a straightforward prophecy might incite recklessness, riddles fostered prudence. These riddles also served political protection. Vague prophecies could not be blamed if disasters followed. Responsibility fell on mortal misunderstanding, preserving the oracle's divine infallibility. People did not seek Delphi for easy answers, but for perspective, glimpse into the unsettling truths of fate as complexity. Apollo's riddles acted as mirrors, reflecting each seeker's flaws, ambitions, and illusions. Whether these prophecies led to triumph or ruin, one truth remained: the oracle never lied. It was human ears that heard only what they wished. The oracle's true power lay beyond her mystic proclamations, lay in how entire nations reshaped themselves based on her words. She was more than a religious figure. She was a diplomatic engine, geopolitical force, and often the quiet architect of ancient history. City-states rarely made major decisions without consulting Delphi, whether on war, alliances, laws, or even natural calamities. In a world void of scientific certainty, strategy, or reliable communication, Delphi served as the Greek world's central nervous system. For instance, colonization efforts required divine sanction. The founding of Cyrene, a rich Greek colony in Africa, began with a Delphic prophecy guiding settlers toward a land where the soil drinks the dew of heaven. Though vague, it granted legitimacy to perilous voyages. Similarly, Sparta's legal and military reforms under Lycurgus received essential oracle support, imbuing their society with divine authority. Delphi often acted as a diplomatic pressure valve. Rival city-states sought arbitration, receiving carefully worded replies that encouraged compromise without overt biased divine statesmanship at work. Her greatest influence surfaced in crisis. Before the Persian Wars, her prophecies forced Greek leaders into hard reckonings, warnings of destruction, alongside assurances of salvation that spurred naval innovation and shaped legendary battles. Even foreign powers from Lydia to Persia, Egypt to Medes respected Delphi, sending gifts and envoys seeking favor or insight into Greek intentions. The oracle functioned as an informal intelligence hub long before espionage, subtly guiding history through riddles and warnings. For nearly a millennium, Delphi's oracle shaped the ancient world. But no power, divine or mortal, lasts forever. Delphi's decline was slower weaving of political turmoil, rising skepticism under classical rationalism, brutal wars over control of the oracle, and shifting spiritual tides of an aging civilization. Philosophers questioned whether the gods truly spoke through mortals. Some implied priests influenced messages. Athens, growing in strength, no longer sought divine approval for every gamble. Sacred wars ravaged the region. Armies marched upon sacred ground. Treasuries were plundered. The temple, once protected by myth itself, became a prize. The rise of Macedon symbolized the shift in power. Philip II famously forced an oracle's prophecy, changing her tone to endorse his invincibility, a sign of kings demanding answers rather than seeking wisdom. Under Roman rule, though tradition persisted, sincere belief waned. The temple's prestige gradually hollowed. Fewer pilgrims came, and geological changes reportedly softened the sacred vapors. The final blow came with Christianity's rise. Theodosius the first banned pagan rites in the late 4th century, closing the temple and silencing the tripod. The Pythia delivered her last known prophecy, then, "Tell the king, the beautiful temple has fallen. Apollo has no home, no oracle, no prophetic laurel." The god's voice faded. The sanctuary turned to ruins, a silent testament to the passing of an age. The closed doors of Delphi's temple marked the end of an era, but the legacy of the oracle, the Pythia, lived on. Long after the temple crumbled and the sacred tripod lay cold, the influence of Delphi cast a long shadow across the ancient and even modern worlds. Though the Pythia's voice fell silent, it echoed through history beyond myth, religion, or politics, testament to humanity's profound need for meaning, guidance, and connection to something greater. To the ancient Greeks, the Pythia was more than merely a prophetess. She symbolized the fragile bridge spanning mortal fear and divine order. People journeyed across oceans, climbed steep mountains, emptied treasuries, and endured years of waiting, all for the enigmatic words rising from a woman seated above a fissure in the earth. Delphi's power lay not solely in prediction, but in its command over human imagination. It gave form to the unknowable. It made the chaotic world just slightly more comprehensible. The oracle's influence seeped into literature, philosophy, and law. Greek tragedians like Aeschylus and Sophocles wove her riddles into their dramas, where pride, fate, and divine justice clashed. Plato often referenced her wisdom, and Socrates famously framed his lifetime mission around a Delphic pronouncement, declaring him the wisest because he knew his own ignorance. The inscription "Know thyself," carved into the temple walls, became a foundational pillar of Western thought. Politically, the oracle's legacy was vast. Her ability to unite or divide city-states made Delphi an ancient diplomatic powerhouse. Modern historians recognize her as the center of a sprawling soft power network that influenced wars, treaties, and colonization long before formal international relations existed. She might be seen as the first global consultant, costly but always in demand. Spiritually, her impact echoes in countless traditions of prophecy and mysticism. From early Christian visions and medieval saints to Renaissance occultism and the modern fascination with psychics, humanity's desire to hear a voice from beyond can trace its roots back to places like Delphi, where the boundary between mortal and divine once felt narrow enough to cross. Today, the ruins of Delphi rest quietly under the Greek sun. Visitors walk the sacred path where kings once trembled. The temple stones sleep. The air is still, and Apollo's voice has been silent for centuries. Yet, the tale of the Pythia endures not as a testament to humanity's timeless hunger for guidance, fate, and mystery. Though her tripod is empty, her power continues to resonate with every question we pose about the future. Far beyond Delphi, strength was not a luxury for the Illyrian Cit, was survival's backbone. Tribal honors language and leadership's currency. In the rugged lands of mountains, dense forests, roaring rivers, and ever-changing weather, a weak body was not merely inconvenient, it was a danger. Every valley, ridge, and cliff demanded endurance. Illyrians shaped their bodies not by choice, but by necessity. Children were plunged into this truth, early running steep hills before they learned to write names, swimming icy rivers before weaving threads. Strength was expected. Endurance was a requirement. Resilience was, for them, the closest thing to religion. Unlike the sculpted Greek athletes who posed in marble perfection, the Illyrian ideal was wilder and rougher, shaped by uneven terrain and relentless hardship. Muscles forged from lifting stones for hill forts. Wrestling livestock, hauling heavy packs through forests, and racing messages between tribes. Living was training. The warrior culture ran deep. Nearly every man was expected to defend his clan when the horn sounded. Athleticism blended with martial skill. A fast runner could outmaneuver foes. A strong swimmer could cross rivers in raids. A skilled rider could deliver news or death faster than any other. The body was both weapon and sacred duty. Tribal pride fueled competitions that were no mere games, but tests of strength with lasting consequences. A victory in a spear contest might etch one's name into tribal memory. Winning races could secure marriage or local legend status. Wrestling triumphs catapulted warriors into renown before battle. Physical skill was celebrated, required, and woven into Aryan identity. To be Aryan was to endure, sweat, strain, and challenge the very land itself. A young warrior who mastered hills earned his place among his people. If Greeks ran in stadiums and Romans raced chariots, Aryans raced the earth. Hill racing, sprinting brutal inclines, rocky ridges, and uneven trails was fundamental. It was training masquerading as glory, born from a land where every village crowned a hill and every battle demanded climbing. To an outsider, Aryan hill racing seemed madness feet thudding on loose soil, sliding stones, air thinning. But Aryans mastered terrain, balancing with arms, leaning forward, cutting sideways along ridges to conserve energy. These races were cultural festivals, occasions for feasts, songs, and challenges. Young warriors, bird-chested or in simple tunics, poddies, marked by years of running, lined up as elders evaluated, watching for the swift, the resilient, the worthy. Women raced too, in often shorter contests tied to rites of passage. Girls who could sprint steep inclines earned acclaim for endurance and resilience, qualities equally revered. The finish line was not always straight. Runners scrambled over rocks, narrow ledges, and impossible slopes to sacred markers. Spectators cheered, insulted, and drummed shields, rituals intensifying competition. Victory brought applause, symbolic rewards such as spears, decorated belts, crowns of mountain herbs, and the honor to lead rituals. Families boasted of champions for generations. Hill racers gained respect and roles in raids and councils. To Aryans, the land was foe and training ground. Conquering hills was the first victory. If mountains shaped their legs, rivers shaped their lungs. Area was carved by fast, cold, and volatile waters, not gentle rivers, but roaring currents full of peril. Mastering these rivers was survival, strategy, and cultural pride. From early childhood, Aryans learned to swim. Often, harshly no trainers, no warm lessons, just a command from elders. Go swim or sink. Those who crossed earned accolades. Those who failed tried again. River skills meant life in herding, warfare, and trade. Aryan rivers hid dangers, slippery stones, fierce currents, sudden drops. But swimmers developed specialized techniques. The mountain stroke kept bodies low. Short, powerful strokes fought currents. Deep dives avoided arrow fire, and silent floating conserved strength. They even mastered swimming while carrying weapons or packs for warfare and stealth. Festivals showcased river games, races across dangerous channels, deep dives for stones, breath-holding contests. Spectators lined banks, cheering wildly. These races were less sport than military drill, training warriors in swift crossings to surprise foes. Children played with water diving for beads, racing sticks, or crafting rafts. By adulthood, Illyrians swam rivers as confidently as others walked land. To outsiders, they seemed fearless, even reckless. To tribes, river mastery meant freedom. In Illyria, freedom meant movement, fighting, and survival, the greatest athletic achievements prized above all else. Illyrian legs, hardened by hills, and lungs strengthened by rushing rivers, were matched by arms tempered through relentless throwing practice. The Illyrians were renowned across the Balkans for their pinpoint accuracy with spears, javelins, and heavy stones, projectiles demanding not just brute strength but precision, instinct, and a tribal rhythm passed through generations. From early childhood, every Illyrian boy and many girls were raised throwing objects, spears at wooden targets, stones at tree trunks, javelins into straw bundles. Even simple sticks became training tools. Elders judged a warrior as future by the accuracy of his throw-in omen, more reliable than any priest's divination. Throwing skill meant success in hunting, survival during raids, and honor through safe return. Training began early with lightweight spears, emphasizing grip and stance until throwing became instinctive. Then, weapons grew heavier, targets receded, and warriors taught youth how to adjust for wind, judge distance, throw while running, and most crucially throw under pressure. Accuracy in calm was insufficient. One had to perform while heart raced, breath burned, and enemies closed in. Illyrian tribal games reflected these realities. Long fields marked with stones or carved totems set distance challenges where warriors competed in accuracy, distance, and technique. The champion spear thrower became a tribal asset, his name carried around campfires long after contests ended. Where spears refined precision, stones built raw power. Illyrians trained with massive, irregular river boulders, strength and technique combined. Some villages maintained giant challenge stones, lifted only by the strongest. Lifting or throwing these stones earned respect, symbolizing power and reputation. Mock combat with blunted spears or wooden staves linked these skills to real battle. Young fighters learned timing, distance, footwork, the dance of throwing, dodging, and recovery skills directly translatable to warfare. To Aryan's strength was no vanity. It was a symbol of readiness, courage, and pride. A warrior's worth was measured by what he could send flying through the air with deadly intent. Among athletic traditions, horsemanship earned the greatest on fear. In rugged highlands, cliffs met valleys, and villages held to steep slopes. Horses were companions, symbols of mobility and status. Aryan horses were small, sturdy, bred for mountain climbing, rough trails, and harsh winters, not elegant but essential. Children learned to ride early, sans saddles, gripping tightly, balancing by instinct. They mastered riding steep inclines, descents, and dense forests. Riding was life, integral to herding, scouting, messaging, and sheer joy. Races lacked formal tracks or cheers. Paths twisted across mountain ridges, riverbanks, meadows. Riders guided horses with weight and voice alone, honed from lifelong trust. Spectators watched from cliffs and terraces, shouting advice, insults, and encouragement. Betting was common, though with goods or favors, not coins. Winning wasn't just speed, it was control. Maneuvering sharp turns, holding balance, recovering from slips, earned vast respect. Mounted spear and javelin games tested deadly skill-hurling weapons at full gallop with frightening precision. Vital for raids and skirmishes. A skilled rider embodied freedom, power, and fierce nobility. Commanding space and movement in tribal culture, shaped by terrain. Daily life forged strength. Festivals revealed it. Aryan athletic festivals were thunderous. Chaotic celebrations, pitting tribes against one another in endurance, courage, and barely restrained aggression. To outsiders, these were warrior auditions. To Aryans, the pulse of tribal pride. Festivals marked seasonal events, spring blooms, harvests, ancestor, veneration, alliances. Families traveled across valleys. Tribes raised banners. Chieftains organized food, music, drink, and contests. Drums echoed. Fires burned late. Grudges simmered. Friendships cemented. Reputations forged. The arena was any open space, a meadow, riverbank, mountain tops circled by eager spectators. Warriors wore tribal tunics, adorned belts, tattoos bearing victories, and youth, painted with ash, sought place among champions. Events varied and intense. Wrestling matches showcased strength and cunning. Barefoot, oiled, or dusted, fighters grappled in swift battles, cheered wildly. A spectacular throw granted weeks of bragging rights. Spear contests judged accuracy, distance, form. Champions faced off, tension rising as the crowd urged them on. Endurance, trials hill races, river crossing relays, stone lifting tested bodies to limits. Collapsing from exhaustion meant mockery, but victory earned fiery acclaim. Women competed too, especially in some tribes, excelling in sprints, river races, throwing challenges. Their victories honored family lines. Festival nights burst with music, feasting, storytelling. Elders recited tales of champions. Youth replayed triumphs with flair. Gifts were exchanged, alliances strengthened, marriages arranged from athletic admiration. In these moments, Aryan athletic spirit soared, a fierce celebration of body, tribe, and the land shaping them. For Aryans' athletic skill and warfare were intertwined. Every sprint, throw, or river crossing not only fortifies body, but sharpens it for brutal tribal conflict. The line between athlete and warrior often fades. Champions in the arena often led charges in battle soon after. Aryan warfare emphasized speed, coordination, and mastery of terrain rugged and alive beneath them. Rivals complained, terrain rose and twisted, but to Aryans it was home. Training mirrored games, intensified morning drills with uphill sprints carrying full gear and packs. Warriors practiced silent movement through brush, tree weaving, rocky climbs. Lakes that won races charged battle lines. Spear practice shifted from games to tactics. Precision throwing in volleys against shields or horsemen, judging wind and distance amidst chaos. Elite throwers became skirmishers whose first strike often shaped battle's outcome. In Illyria, mastery of rivers transformed from simple survival skill into a vital military advantage. Aryan raiding parties gained a fearsome reputation by appearing where no army was. Expected, merging dripping wet on the far bank of river, scouts swore impossible to cross. Their swimming drills taught not only athletic prowess, but stealth tactics, ambush strategies, and rapid retreats. Enemies were confounded by these unexpected maneuvers because Aryans refused to be constrained by nature's barriers. Horsemanship became equally crucial. Riders trained relentlessly to throw javelins at full gallop, navigate tight corners, and maneuver narrow passes with unmatched control. These horsemen emerged as lightning-fast shock troops, scouts, raiders, and battlefield disruptors. Their agility unnerved infantry, which relied on ordered, disciplined lines and formations. Wrestling, too, held paramount martial value. It taught balance, close quarters grappling, and the ability to fight when weapons failed or were lost. A skilled wrestler was difficult to topple, a vital quality amidst chaotic combat. For Aryans, the body was the primary weapon, athletics its training ground, and battle the ultimate arena. Their athletic culture forged warriors, shaped by land, tempered in tradition, sharpened for war. Athletic skills were a spiritual language in Illyria. Each contest connected participants to ancestors, gods, and the very earth shaping their bodies. Strength wasn't merely for victory. It signified harmony with nature. Illyrian spirituality revered mountains, storms, rivers, forests, and sacred animals. Tribes believed their gods dwelled in towering peaks, deep springs, and ancient oaks. Athletic festivals on mountaintops or riverbanks were profound offerings. Running uphill was ascension to war divinity. Crossing rivers symbolized souls entering sacred realms. Festivals started with purification, rites bathing in cold rivers or spilling mountain herbs, rubbing ash to cleanse fear and weakness. Elders invoked protection from local deities, offering water or wine on stone altars, calling for strength and clarity. Tribal pride infused every ritual. Warriors competed not alone, but under watchful, ancestral eyes, seeking the favor of brave spirits. Victories were signs of divine approval. Laurel and oak wreaths crowned champions, while painted tribal markings, spirals, zigzags, geometrics served not as adornment, but protective charms. Certain hills and rivers held annual contests, believed to host ancient blessings, with stones thought to absorb the energy of greatness and pass it on. Aryan athletes bonded deeply to landscapes. Athletics fused body and spirit. Strength honored gods. Endurance honored ancestors. Victory honored tribe. To compete was worship. To triumph, transcendence. Though Aryan tribes declined under Roman conquest, their spirit endured, woven into the fighting styles of gladiators, echoed in Balkan Highland traditions, and influencing how endurance and honor were viewed later. The Illyrians left no marble stadiums, no grand gymnasia, no temples, but their legacy lives in bodies, battlefields, and rugged lands that shaped European history. Romans noticed the different Syrian soldiers were forged by terrain and hardship, not barracks. Roman generals admired their stamina, recruiting them as scouts, skirmishers, and mountain troops, even adopting Aryan training in running, throwing, and riding for battlefield advantage. Some Illyrians entered gladiatorial schools where their conditioning healed running. Stone lifting, weapon throwing prepared resilient bodies for dramatic combat. Roman crowds saw Illyrians move wilder, quicker, less predictable, trained by nature, not coaches. Beyond warfare and spectacle, Illyrian athleticism deeply influenced Balkan culture, with enduring competitions in lifting and racing survived in Albania, Montenegro, Bosnian nostalgia, but necessity of the land, demanding the same skills. Psychologically, strength, endurance, and skill became measures of honor, character, and leadership. Centuries after political fade, Illyrians were remembered as fierce, tireless, gifted, feared, even by enemies. Modern archaeology confirms this legacy, discovering tool sites, training grounds, ceremonial festival spaces, and dialogue with environment that demanded strength matching its trials. In the end, Aryan legacy is not only stones and stories, but the profound idea: strength born from struggle, endurance from terrain, skill honed by necessity, a people carved by mountains and rivers, whose fearless spirit still echoes